Welcome everybody to another edition of Let's Be Frank About Sports. I'm your host Frank Cugino. For the first time in this regular season in the NFL, one of the two local teams that play in New Jersey got their first victory, and that was the New York Giants beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was the main storyline over the weekend in local sports because of what an exciting thriller it was, a real roller coaster game that the Giants were able to pull out at the end thanks to their rookie quarterback Daniel Jones in his first career NFL start. So that was a really big game for the Giants and giving you something to look forward to not only this season but in the future as well. On the other side, we had the Jets taking on the New England Patriots, and for the Jets, they were able to beat the spread, but that's really not all that impressive when you consider going into this game, the Jets were over a 20-point underdog going up against New England, and that just tells you all you need to know about the Jets season thus far, and pretty much is going to sum up the entire season. They've just been flat out awful and extremely disappointing because we know that the Jets have not had any success in the past few years, ever since Rex Ryan left and after they had that nice run of back-to-back AFC title game appearances. The Jets have not been able to do anything close to that ever since, and this is going to be another year that adds on to it, and they just continue to not be a very good team. Yes, the quarterback is out with mononucleosis, and he imagines to be back sometime soon, not next week, but maybe in a couple of weeks. We don't have an exact return date for Sam Darnold, but still, it's like the addition of the head coach and the star running back, and some new offensive linemen, in particular KJ Osemele and Khalil. And then on defense, signing a big-time linebacker in CJ Mosley and having a top draft pick and using it on a defensive lineman in Quinn Williams, you would think that the Jets are going to be an improved team along with their new head coach who's supposed to help improve the offense. Something that the Jets have struggled in with recent years due to having a lot of defensive-minded coaches, even including Rex Ryan. But Todd Bowles, same thing. The Jets have had a lot of these defensive-minded coaches, but it hasn't made any difference. And if anything, the Jets have been even worse. I mean, some people were thinking, maybe the Jets could hover around 500, possibly finish over 500. But this year, they'll be lucky to just win a game or two with the way it has been going so far. And it's just like all those things that we raved about. Well, first of all, obviously Darnold has the mono, but CJ Mosley and Quinn Williams being hurt, that really hurts what you can do as a football team as far as winning games. And against the New England Patriots and a third-string quarterback, and you don't have that good of a team to begin with, I mean, you make it really hard on yourselves to win a game. And for the Jets, I just think that losing that Week 1 game, it also tells you a lot. It was a very telling game because the way the Jets looked like they were completely in control, they finally were starting to get some offense going in the second half, and the defense was playing well. But then once CJ Mosley came out of this game, the Jets defense fell off a cliff, and they couldn't make any stops, and your defense should not be that reliant on one player. I mean, it's a team game. You have 10 other guys that are out there other than CJ Mosley. Those players have to be able to make plays, and the Jets did not address the secondary enough, in particular the cornerback positions. We know that Trumaine Johnson has been a bust so far with the big contract that they gave him at the end, last offseason. Not this one, but the one 2 years ago, because Trumaine Johnson was on the Jets last year. Wasn't good in that season either. And the way the Jets just can't cover any receivers, it limits what you can do defensively because there is no way you could play any type of man coverage when Trumaine Johnson and these other corners can't guard their man that they would apparently be defending. You would hope that having quality safeties in Jamal Adams and Marcus May could help in that type of a defense, giving them over-the-top, cushion and maybe shade the receivers and double them or what have you, and just have Jamal Adams and Marcus May running all over the field making plays. But it's just not enough. And Leonard Williams being another bust because that was a top draft pick by the Jets a few years ago. This is his last year of his rookie deal, and he has not made a big impact. So all these things being considered, the Jets have not done what they're supposed to do. And the offensive line has not been improved. And that's a big problem because it really negates the signing of somebody like Le'Veon Bell. And to continue with the type of injuries that the Jets have had, losing Quincy Enunwa is a big loss because he's someone that is pretty underrated and not talked about as far as nationally as, good players. But Quincy Enunwa could do a lot of things just with his size and his athleticism and his ability to catch the ball. I mean, you could throw a screen pass to Enunwa and get some positive yardage, almost a first down. But he's just a guy that it opens up more things for you offensively, which is something that really has to happen, because once you become predictable, the defense knows how to play you and you don't stand any chance offensively. And you'd hope that a offensive-minded head coach like Adam Gase would be able to figure some other things out. And another problem for the Jets to continue with injuries, them making the trade to acquire Demaryius Thomas from the Patriots, giving a late draft pick. And Demaryius Thomas was hurt in the first game he played, and he didn't play in this most recent game either. So it's like that's another player who's supposed to help the Jets, can't make any impact on the field if you're not on the field to begin with. So all these things being combined has led to the Jets being 0-3, and they're going to have another really bad year. And it's going to be interesting. Who are they going to take in the draft? I mean, I know it's like so early to think about because we're still in September. We just wrapped up week 3. But still, it's like the Jets have to think about that, because if you look at how bad the defense is and how bad the offense is, the Jets have a lot of areas to address. So you have to look at the strengths of the draft, who you could get in the draft, who you could get in free agency, who can you build from within, all these different things that you have to consider when you're constructing the team, because there is more work that needs to be done that Joe Douglas is going to have to figure out. Because another weird thing that happened to the Jets was firing Mike Maccagnan shortly after the draft. One thing we heard is that he lost a power struggle to Adam Gase, which now seems really silly with how the Jets have been even worse under Gase, and Adam Gase has not made the offense better, which is what he was supposed to do. We can't fully grade Gase until we get the rest of the season with Sam Darnold. That is the main thing that he was brought in here to do, because the Jets felt that they had found the guy in Sam Darnold, taking him with the high draft pick 2 years ago. And in the first year, he had his ups and downs, but that happens a lot with rookie quarterbacks. And you're just hoping that in his second year, with an offensive-minded head coach and the acquisition of Le'Veon Bell, some new offensive linemen, and an improved defense, the Jets, again, like they should be a quality team. Has not happened, and we will see what happens going forward, but there's not really too much to talk about. They're just a really bad all-around team, and if Falk is your quarterback, nothing is going to happen, and there's no way you're going to stop the Patriots, so don't even think about it. But let's get to the really important game, and that was the Giants game. Daniel Jones making his NFL debut, and the Giants, they're in a similar situation to the Jets with the young quarterback, taking him with the high round draft pick in the most recent draft, hoping that he is the guy that is going to fill in for Eli Manning and kind of take the torch from Eli, grab the baton, so to speak, run with it, and bring the Giants some much, prolonged success that they have not had since their last Super Bowl run. And even that one playoff run they had in the first year under McAdoo, and they did not play well against the Packers at all in the first game. The Giants want to come back to a winning team, because this is a franchise that in the past, throughout their history has been known for winning. And in these past few years have just not been Giants-like at all. And that's why you hope that Daniel Jones could get you back to the glory days. I'm not saying win you some Super Bowls, but not to be a laughingstock or a team that is always drafting in the top of the draft, which the Giants have done in the past 2 years, getting Saquon Barkley and then getting Daniel Jones. And with the way the season has started, 0-2 again, you were hoping that you were not going to be drafting that high or low in the draft, whatever you want to call it. One of the first few picks, you did not want to be in that type of scenario again, because it just tells you that year after year, you are not showing any improvement. And we talk about the Giants trying to get an improved head coach. We have not seen any improvement under Pat Shurmur than we saw under Ben McAdoo. Maybe players are a little more accountable and things aren't as bad in the locker room as they were under McAdoo. But still, as far as on-field performance, it hasn't really been that impressive. But with Daniel Jones out there and having a quarterback with mobility, which Pat Shurmur has said that he wanted to have in order to run his offense, the one that he had when he was the coordinator for Minnesota, and making Case Keenum look like a good quarterback, and all the different quarterbacks that the Vikings had went through after Sam Bradford got hurt. You just wanted to see what Shurmur is capable of as an offensive-minded head coach. And for Daniel Jones, it was a really nice rookie start for him, and it was just an impressive start because when you look at the numbers, 23 out of 36 for 336 yards, 14.6 average completions, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Did Daniel Jones have some fumbles? Yes. But the thing that impressed me the most about Daniel Jones, besides his running, was the fact that Daniel Jones got sacked 5 times, got hit even more times, and was hurried and pressured a bunch. And it wasn't like, Daniel Jones got sacked 5 times. It was like he was getting hit really, really hard. I mean, they were knocking him down like he was a wide receiver or a running back. And to me, with the way quarterbacks are protected nowadays, I was surprised that when the Buccaneers were basically spearing Daniel Jones, that there weren't any flags thrown. Because think of all the roughing the passer calls we've seen, like the one Monday night, Jets-Browns, where Jamal Adams at the very last second gives Baker Mayfield a little love tap, just a little shove. Baker falls to the floor, roughing the passer on Jamal Adams, and a fine, a pretty big fine as well. So you're thinking that with the way Daniel Jones is getting crushed, how could there not be any flags? And one of the things that I wonder, because we're being frank about it, is the way the NFL does protect quarterbacks. But the big-time money guys, the ones that draw ratings, that draw revenue for the NFL, those guys are protected even more. If this was Tom Brady getting hit this hard, or Aaron Rodgers, or a healthy, let's say maybe Andrew Luck, they'd let him get killed too. But some of these big-time quarterbacks, maybe a Ben Roethlisberger when he was healthy, or a Drew Brees, guys like that, when they get hit hard, I just feel that there would be more common that they would throw a flag because they want to keep those guys protected, keep them on the field. But another thing that I said last week, with Brees and Roethlisberger getting hurt, the rules could do so much to protect the quarterbacks, but sometimes things just happen and you get hurt without expecting it. I'm still in shock that Ben Roethlisberger messed up his elbow, is out for the season because of how durable he is. He's taken a lot of hard hits and played through a lot of really, painful injuries. And as a guy that is very durable and stays in there no matter what, even at an advanced age, consistent and everything like that, and even someone like Drew Brees, who's always out there as well, to see both of them out on not getting, crushed on a play like the way Aaron Rodgers did a couple years ago when Anthony Barr fell on him when they were playing the Vikings. Not having plays like that and seeing these big-time quarterbacks get hurt, it's just been very interesting. And that was the other takeaway of this week. And so far throughout this regular season in general, so many guys where during the offseason, let's say you're projecting the starting quarterbacks for all the teams, because a lot of them automatically. A lot of these guys aren't out there because we see Cam Newton get hurt, and we already know that Nick Foles is hurt, and Andrew Luck retiring, and we talked about Brees being hurt, and Roethlisberger being hurt, Sam Darnold out with mono, then Eli Manning getting benched for Daniel Jones, and you could just go on and on with all the different quarterback changes we've seen throughout the first week in the NFL. That's almost a quarter of the teams, a third of the teams that have different quarterbacks than they were projected to have week 1. And that's just very interesting because I've talked about before, it's a quarterback-driven league, and all the injuries that we're seeing, like a Cam Newton or like a Nick Foles, these things that we don't expect, it's just a physical sport, and injuries happen in general with any of these sports. So all of that has been very interesting. But one of the things that having Daniel Jones did do is that you did see a better offense from Pat Shurmur. Having the ability to do a read option definitely opened up the playbook for the Giants, and it just gave them a different look and ended up being the difference maker in the game. Having a quarterback with some mobility, because on the Giants' last drive, right by the goal line, Daniel Jones is looking for someone to throw to. He sees the middle of the field is wide open and there's nobody there, so he runs there himself untouched for the go-ahead touchdown. And I just wonder that had Eli Manning been out there, would Eli have taken that scramble for the touchdown? I don't think so, because I don't remember the last time we saw Eli Manning scramble for positive yards. It surely wasn't this year or last year. It must have been a few years ago. And I just think that knowing Eli, he probably would try to force it to somebody, whether it's Ingram or, Shepard or Barkley or whoever it is. I just don't see Eli Manning doing that same play that Daniel Jones did, but it ended up winning them the game. And I remember another play call where Daniel Jones faked. Actually, no, he handed the ball off to Saquon Barkley, but faked like he was running to the outside. and Daniel Jones had a wide open lane, but he didn't have the ball. And I was saying to myself, oh my gosh, if Daniel Jones had the ball, he would have had a long gain. Then shortly after, they did another read option where Daniel Jones kept the ball, got positive yardage out of it. And then there was another, this was like the most impressive play of the game to me, is where Daniel Jones looked like he's going to be sacked again from the left side from Barron. Because here's the other thing that was a real problem for the Giants. We want to talk about, how good Daniel Jones was, and he was good. But who was not good was Nate Solder. And that is a big problem because we've known that in the previous, past couple of years, Giants' offensive line has been a really, really big problem and has prevented them from opening up the playbook, making the most out of their offense, because you can't say that the Giants have not had skilled position players, because they've had. Eli Manning is still, in those couple of years, a good quarterback. You had Odell Beckham. You had Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Saquon Barkley. All this talent, and you can't do anything about it because if you have no offensive line, these guys don't have time to get open. They don't have any lanes to run through. If you're a running back in Saquon Barkley, Eli Manning's getting killed because he can't move around. So the Giants had to address the offensive line. And Nate Solder had a reputation as a good left tackle, and that is a very important spot on the line as far as pass blocking, because that is the blind side, because Eli can't see his left side being a right-handed thrower. Same for Daniel Jones. So you need that left tackle to seal that off, let the quarterback see what's in front of him, make the plays. And the way Barrett was going around Nate Solder like he's Khalil Mack or one of these other big-time pass rushers, Aaron Donald, whoever you want to use, it was just really embarrassing because Nate Solder is getting paid all this money and he has to be better than that. Computer problems. But anyway, Nate Solder, how could you not be blocking Barry and letting the future and Daniel Jones get clobbered like that in the backfield? What if Daniel Jones got hurt? Then it's like you have this exciting player who's making big plays in spite of a bad offensive line and bad defense and not having that many good receivers out there due to suspensions and health. And then even Saquon Barkley had to come out of this game. That's another major storyline out of this game. But still, it just absolutely cannot happen. With the money they paid Nate Solder, he just has to be better than that. And we thought that he was coming around, but it was just not pretty at all, especially considering the team is going up against. I know the Buccaneers have an okay defense, and Todd Bowles is an aggressive defensive corner. Not a good head coach, but an aggressive defensive corner. Likes to blitz, try to trick a young quarterback, but still, Nate Solder just not impressive at all. But my favorite play of this game was Nate Solder. He's getting blown by again by Barrett. He goes to grab Daniel Jones, and he looked like he had him, but Daniel Jones kind of went like this, on the move, starts running, throws it, Saquon Barkley right over the middle, makes a nice jumping catch, and then kind of twirls, falls over a guy that tackled him. And it was just a really nice play. And I tweeted, that is not a play that Eli Manning could make. Because, first of all, Eli Manning would just went down. Number two, he wouldn't be able to run on the move and then find Saquon Barkley over the middle. So I just think that is so impressive because, when you have a bad offensive line, the ability to extend plays and still make something out of it despite the pressure you're under, I think that's very impressive. We also saw some other instances where, the pocket was collapsing and Daniel Jones is somehow staying in there, not getting worried, staying poised, get the ball out there, make some completions, and just, again, a really nice game for Daniel Jones. Obviously, it's only one game, and the other really bad thing about this game was that the Giants actually should have lost. Number one, the defense was so bad in the first half. Jameis Winston was having his way, getting the ball to their top guy, Mike Evans, and Mike Evans finished the game with 8 catches for 190 yards and 3 touchdowns. One of the things that I did not like at all was I remember a play where Jameis Winston goes over the top to Mike Evans, and Mike Evans is in single coverage against Janoris Jenkins, and that is a major mistake if you're Betcher and the Giants team. You cannot have that type of defensive game plan where Mike Evans, you should double team him, triple team him, whatever it takes. You can't have Janoris Jenkins going one-on-one against him. Janoris Jenkins is not that type of player anymore. He needs safety help. He needs help from somewhere. No matter who it is, I don't care. You got to play some type of zone, whatever it takes, because Mike Evans could single-handedly beat you, which is what he was doing. Because, look at the differential in yards between Mike Evans and the rest of the team. Let's do it. Mike Evans had 190 yards. Howard had 66 yards. Jones, 41 yards. Goodwin, 40. Ogulabubale, 23. Brait, 7. Barber, 7. Perryman, 6. So I'd much rather have the 7 yards or the 6 yards or the 20 yards instead of 190 yards. And Mike Evans got targeted 15 times. And Jameis Winston threw the ball 37 times. So that was almost half of his attempts were going towards Mike Evans. And he threw the ball 40 times in this game. And luckily, the Giants made some changes in their scheme defensively in the second half, helped them limit Mike Evans and not have the crazy first half that he was having. They were able to do a much better job on him in the second half. That is what kept them in the game. However, in the Buccaneers' last drive, they were right there. They were in the red zone, and they're like, okay, we got the game-winning field goal. I mean, it was a gimme. It was a chip shot. It was right there, but somehow the Buccaneers kicker missed it. And it was just like, it was so ironic to see something, Gay is his name, but to see a kicker miss a kick at the end of the game against the Giants, to be the deciding factor in the game, the deciding play, and it go the Giants' way, very surprising considering what we've seen in the past 2 years against the Eagles and the Carolina Panthers, where the Giants have the game in the bag, look like they haven't won. Then these guys make these kicks from ridiculous, spots that you just think there's no way they're going to make this, and they do. And the Giants have these crushing losses. It was like, oh, here we go, another Giants game. They lose to a field goal. But for the guy to miss it, it just really fed into the new day it was. It was a different outcome. It was a different quarterback. It was a different type of offense, a different feel. I mean, this was actually an exciting game to watch. I was on the edge of my seat. I was, just really excited to watch it because it was something different. It was something better. It was more energetic. It just had a different feel to it. It really, really did. And I just know that if Eli Manning was out there, as much as we love Eli, we know what he's going to do. His little checkdowns to Saquon, or a play that doesn't go very far, or he can't escape the pressure and he gets hit and he misses the receiver or whatever. It's just like, we're tired of seeing that. We've seen it for far too long. It hasn't been working. And you just saw a different playbook out there. We even saw the Giants, handing it off to Saquon and doing an end around. I mean, we were just seeing different things that we were not seeing with Eli Manning under center. And I think it was better, and obviously it was better because the Giants actually won a game. They really could have lost this game, and I thought they were going to because of the defense collapsing. But still, it's like, for the Giants, they have to decide, what are they going to do to fix this defense? Because whatever they've done has not worked. It has not been enough. And two big problems from this game, as good as Daniel Jones was, Saquon Barkley having the high ankle sprain could be out as long as 8 weeks. I don't think he's going to be out that long, but he could be out that long. And that's a big problem because, like I've said before, Saquon Barkley is like the best player on this team, and he could do so many different things, and he did do different things because we know the type of runner he is, but he also made that tremendous catch I talked about, my favorite play of the game, where Daniel Jones found him over the middle. You need Saquon Barkley out there if you want to do anything offensively and win games. And I just think that Saquon Barkley is so important for Daniel Jones, having that running game, the ability to do the read option, because the defense is so focused on Saquon Barkley and trying to stop him. That is what allows those open running lanes when Daniel Jones keeps it himself, and he could get really good plays out of that. But without Saquon Barkley, you're going to have to ask Goldman to fill in, and it's just not going to be the same. There's a lot of veteran running backs, well-known names out there. No one's going to replace Saquon Barkley, but I do think it is worth bringing them in because, number one, Goldman's not good enough, and he's not going to be enough. He's not going to be there for every single snap. You're going to need another running back in general, and I just hope that some way, somehow, the Giants' offensive line can improve because week in, week out, you don't want to see Daniel Jones take that type of beating. It makes it really tough for him. The other thing was the fumbles that Daniel Jones had. Wasn't able to hold on to the ball as well as you'd like him to, but that's just part of being a rookie quarterback, and I do think it is something that will get better with time, and you'll just be happy that you got the win, and it was just a much better game all around. And here's the thing, Giants were over 30 points. They scored 32 points, and for a while, they had a streak where they couldn't even score 30 points, even with Odell Beckham and a healthy Shepard and Ingram and Saquon Barkley and Eli Manning. They couldn't even score 30 points for a while, and for them to do it on Daniel Jones' first start, I just think that all that was really good. And, what else can you say? You just hope that this is the start of a new era, that Daniel Jones could continue to do this going forward for many years to come, and the Giants could come back to being a winning team. But they've got to find a way to fix that defense. They can't be allowing all the yards and points that they have been doing for the past couple of years. It has to be corrected, and you also have to find a way to protect Daniel Jones better. You cannot let him take that type of beating every single game, and obviously got to fill it for Saquon, but that's short term. Like, the defense is going to be a problem next year, and the offensive line is probably going to be a problem next year as well. We know Saquon Barkley will be back, and he'll still be a really good player. Some of the other takeaways from around the NFL that happened, the big game as far as what was hyped up was the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Baltimore Ravens, two of the highest scoring offenses due to two of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league as far as quarterback ratings and what they've been doing numbers-wise between Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs and Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. These guys both can put up a lot of points, but they do it in different ways. Patrick Mahomes does it more so with his arm, and Lamar Jackson does it kind of with his arm and some with his legs. Lamar Jackson, I talk about my favorite play from the Giants game. Lamar Jackson had a really impressive run where he juked one defender by the goal line, then spun around and was tackled, but was able to stay up and still get in the end zone for a really nice touchdown. But the Chiefs, they're just a tough offense to stop because they find ways to, get big plays, get down the field because of Mahomes' ability to extend plays, move around, and then he could make such accurate throws on the run, and he spreads the ball out very well. Guys you never heard before will have big games. We thought Sammy Watkins was done after he started his career with the Bills, but you know what? He'll have a big game for the Chiefs. Then in this particular game, you had Hardman go off, and does anybody know who Hardman is? Probably not, but he almost had 100 yards in this game against the Baltimore Ravens, whose secondary is better than the Jets and better than the Giants. So to score 30-plus points against them is impressive. And they also added LaShawn McCoy, who had a good game for them. And that's what I'm saying about the Chiefs. They could plug in all these different guys. And when you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Andy Reid as your head coach, it just opens you to a lot of possibilities and ways to score points. Mark Ingram had another good game on the ground for the Ravens. Hollywood Brown did not have the games that he had in the previous couple of games. He was targeted 9 times and only got 2 catches for 49 yards. So, the Chiefs being able to take him out of the game was a big part. And the other guy that had been a big target for the Ravens, Mark Andrews, he got targeted 7 times, but only 3 catches for 15 yards. So the two guys that got targeted the most because they've had the best games as far as receiving for the Ravens, not able to do anything. So you give a lot of credit to the Chiefs, and Lamar Jackson not as accurate as he was in the first 2 games. So that's why you're concerned, is he this good throwing quarterback, or does he still need to work on it? He does still need to work on it, but we'll see how it goes throughout the course of the year. The next interesting game, the Carolina Panthers defeating the Arizona Cardinals 38-20, and Cam Newton being hurt, and you're like, Cam Newton is the Panthers offense. That's all you think about with them, other than Christian McCaffrey, who's a great player, had a terrific game, and Greg Olsen, who's a great tight end, had a great game. But Cam Newton is the guy. That's who it starts with. That's who the offense is built around. And with Cam Newton being out and Kyle Allen taking over, someone who is not a household name, for him to have a really accurate game as far as percentage, 19 for 26, only 261 yards, but having 4 passing touchdowns, the ability to finish off drives, that is something that can get overlooked sometimes because you're like, oh, wow, this quarterback threw for a ton of yards. This team had a lot of, yards from scrimmage. But if you keep ending up getting field goals when we get to the red zone and you don't get the maximum amount of points, that is the difference between winning and losing games. But the Panthers, they didn't waste any time, and Kyle Allen was able to find Greg Olsen twice for touchdowns, and Christian McCaffrey had a big game on the ground. 24 attempts for 153 yards, 6 average, a touchdown, and a long of 76. He really took off on that play. And for the Cardinals, we talk about protecting Sam Darnold, protecting Daniel Jones. How about Kyler Murray, the number 1 pick in the draft overall under this Cliff Kingsbury air raid offense, and Murray gets sacked 8 times and throws 2 interceptions. That is not good for Arizona. You cannot have these star quarterbacks get hit like that, because you know what? Somebody like Kyler Murray, you got to be worried about him, because if he gets beat up like that and he starts getting hurt, he's going to say, forget this, I'm going to go play for the Oakland Athletics, I'm going to baseball, I'm going to make my money, and I'm going to stay healthy. Because why wouldn't you do that? You think of what just happened with Andrew Luck. And the way it's like, here's this big-time quarterback. You think the Colts are going to have a pretty good year again. And he'll just be like, you know what, 2 injuries, I'm done. See you later. In his 20s. And with Kyler Murray, we know he was very on the fence between baseball and football, and you just never know. So you really have got to find ways to protect these quarterbacks. I don't care if you have to put a running back there, put tight ends back there, put another offensive lineman out there, put a receiver back there, whatever it takes. The coach has to go out there and block the quarterback. You have got to protect your franchises. You can't let these guys get hurt because then you have no franchise. You have no future. It's a quarterback-driven league. You can't let them get killed. But, I mean, we've seen a lot of teams be able to use their backup quarterbacks and still be effective. Like the Colts, who I just mentioned with Andrew Luck being hurt, they've gotten so much out of Jacoby Brissett, and they got another tremendous game out of him against the Falcons, going 28 out of 37 for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, only sacked once due to that improved Colts offensive line, and they win the game 27-24, despite Julio Jones having 8 catches for 128 yards, and Matt Ryan having a really nice game on the air, Devontae Freeman having a good game on the ground. Despite all that, the Colts are still able to overcome it, and Brissett is able to win games. And you know what? You just got to give the Colts a ton of credit because, like I've said every week, when Andrew Luck went down, it was so easy to just pack it in and be like, all right, forget it. Not our year. Now we have to get another quarterback. How can Andrew Luck do that to us? But no, they stuck with it, and you got to give a lot of credit to Frank Reich, their head coach, and just the Colts in general, the whole team, to trust Brissett and have him play well, and it's really paid off for them. Another game to talk about, the Rams defeating the Cleveland Browns. Jared Goff, not the craziest game in the world. I mean, 24 for 38, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Todd Gurley, not a great game, 14 carries for 43 yards. This was a low-scoring game, and the Rams winning 20-13. But here's the big problem. The Browns. Baker Mayfield going 18 for 36 with a touchdown, an interception, and getting sacked 3 times. And Odell Beckham Jr. having 9 targets with only 6 catches for 56 yards. And Jarvis Landry having 9 targets for 3 catches and 62 yards. I think you have to be really concerned about the Cleveland Browns. We understand the talent they have. Think of the names I just read out to you. Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham. Chubb had a big game on the ground, 23 carries for 96 yards. All this talent offensively, but there's 2 other problems that they have. Number 1, they have a lot of personality, a lot of egos. We know, living in New York, all the things that Odell Beckham says and does that affects the team. And when Odell's not happy, everything hits the fan because he complains and cries and really can mess up your team. And you just don't want to see that happen to Cleveland as well. And Jarvis Landry, his LSU buddy, he's a guy that is very emotional and he'll start complaining and causing problems. And Baker Mayfield is a guy that, likes to talk. So I just worry that the Cleveland Browns may explode from within. And if they don't turn around soon, they really could have a disappointing year. And they were a team that had a lot of expectations. And when you have a rookie head coach in Freddie Kitchens, there's a lot of moving parts that are going on here. And for the Browns, they just got to find a way to turn around. They got to really focus in. Baker Mayfield has got to be better than that. You can't be missing Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham that much. I mean, for Landry to have 9 targets and only 3 catches, that's not good because Jarvis Landry could catch anything. That tells you that Baker Mayfield is not giving him accurate enough passes for him to really, make a hold on and make something happen. Next game, Houston Texans defeating the Los Angeles Chargers in LA. Deshaun Watson with a really nice game, 25 out of 34, 351 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Texans, they didn't really have a running game in this one at all. Carlos Hyde, 10 carries for 19 yards. Even Deshaun Watson, 7 carries for 18 yards. But they were still able to win because of their defense, led by J.J. Watt, and Deshaun Watson having a really nice game in the air. And DeAndre Hopkins not having that big of an impact. It was Kenny Stills that had more yards than Hopkins, and even Atkins had a really nice game. But Deshaun Watson did do a good job of spreading the wealth because you look at Fells having 50 yards, Fuller with 50, Hopkins with 70, Atkins with 70, and Kenny Stills with 90. Deshaun Watson was able to get the ball to multiple targets, and that's what ended up winning the game for them. Jonathan Joseph had a big one. This one having 9 tackles and a couple pass deflections, and they just didn't let Phillip Rivers do what he wanted to do because Phillip Rivers got sacked 5 times in this, and that is what the Texans can do when you have J.J. Watt on that defensive line, you have the ability to bring pressure because Watt draws a lot of attention. He could get double teamed, and it frees up those other pass rushers to get to the quarterback. And Phillip Rivers is someone who, once he gets sacked a lot, he starts yelling and going crazy, and he could just lose his mind. He starts throwing the ball all over the place, and they just can't do anything about it. Keenan Allen had a really big game, but that was it. They did not have the all-around receivers giving you multiple production like the way the Texans did, a really balanced attack. So give the Texans credit, and so far it's been a pretty disappointing year for the Chargers because they were in the second round of the playoffs last year. They have plenty of talent on both sides of the ball. I talk about it every week, but results haven't been there so far, and you have to wonder what the Chargers are going to do here because Phillip Rivers, he's up there in age. We talk about all the quarterback changes that are going on with the Giants and Eli Manning. You think of Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, they were in that same draft class. They had, very similar careers as far as their progression. Eli's got the Super Bowls, Phillip Rivers does not. But the way Eli Manning's got benched because of his age, you have to wonder if eventually the Chargers, if they don't have a good year, and with the good quarterback draft class that's out there, I don't think they're going to get that high of a pick. But the Chargers do have to be on the lookout and maybe get a young quarterback, a future of their own. Maybe later, because you could get a lot of quarterbacks later in the draft. That is an underrated thing. But you think of a Tom Brady or a Russell Wilson, there's a lot of quarterbacks that you take later on and they end up becoming, really good quarterbacks. So it doesn't need to be the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick because you look at Jameis Winston. He was a top pick, but he hasn't been that good. And the Buccaneers, they've do we keep Jameis? Do we not keep Jameis? Jimmy Garoppolo, he wasn't the overall first round pick, but he's been really good. So you could get quarterbacks in all different parts of the draft. And you look at Kyle Allen having the good game, he wasn't a top pick. Or Minshew for the Jaguars was not a top pick. So all these guys, you never know where they're going to come from. Even though Jacoby Brissett wasn't, a top 10 pick, but he could still win games for you. So the Chargers really have to be on the lookout. Maybe draft a quarterback or sign a quarterback, trade for a quarterback, do something because Phillip Rivers isn't going to be there forever, and he looks like he's on the decline because if they're not winning, they're going to have to get another quarterback because eventually he's going to call it quits. He's not going to be there forever. And for the Steelers, talking about young quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph having his first full game with Ben Roethlisberger being out for the year. Didn't have a crazy game, going 14 for 27, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 2 sacks. Steelers weren't able to do much on the ground. Connor, 13 carries for 43 yards. That's just not enough. Even Mason Rudolph was trying to run himself, only 15 yards on 4 carries. And Juju Smith-Schuster, all he had was a big 76-yard play. But other than that, the 7 targets for 3 catches, like I said, all he has that one big play. And for the Steelers, they're just so drastically different now. Not having Ben Roethlisberger because he's injured, Le'Veon Bell's with the Jets, and Antonio Brown's out of the league. You know what I mean? So the Patriots finally released him, and Antonio Brown, being the drama queen that he is, said that he's out of the NFL because of the hypocrites like Robert Kraft with what he got caught with last year at the massage parlors. So, all the different drama that goes on with the NFL and especially with Antonio Brown. But another nice win for the 49ers. And you know what? They're 3-0. It hasn't been pretty. It's not something you expected. But as long as you're winning games, you just have to try to do the best you can because the 49ers, they don't play in the best division in the world. And the Seahawks, they've had a really interesting year. That's the next team we'll talk about. How about them losing to the Saints and Teddy Bridgewater not having a crazy game, Alvin Kamara not having that great of a game, but still, Saints beat the Seahawks 33-27, and that was just a really nice game for them because of the defensive touchdown that the New Orleans Saints had by Bell. And that could just be the difference maker in a game and can cause you to lose. And there were so many penalties in this game. And Seattle had a lot more plays than New Orleans. They had way more yards than New Orleans. Look at the differential. Seattle with 406 passing yards and 515 total yards of offense. Meanwhile, the Saints only had 265 yards, less time of possession, less first downs, more penalties, same amount of turnovers. There were no sacks in this game. But the Saints still find a way to win. And it's how could something like that happen? It's really just amazing because, for the Seahawks, they're going to be in a tough spot because if they lose games to the Saints and just a lot of the Seahawks games have been a lot closer than you thought they'd be, the 49ers could actually steal that division, and that is not something that we probably expected going into the year. And for the Niners, to get back to them, they really have to hope that Garoppolo could stay on the field, because that has been his major problem. We know Garoppolo has a lot of talent, and when he plays, they usually win. But it's just that he hasn't been out there because of the injuries that he has run into far too often. So, really nice win for the Saints. I mean, not having Drew Brees. Teddy Bridgewater, not the best game. You know, it doesn't blow you away. 19 for 27, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kamara didn't do too much, 16 carries for 69 yards. But Kamara did have a really good game receiving, being targeted 10 times, 9 catches for 92 yards. You know, a very dynamic player, a great player. And that helped being the difference maker in defeating the Seattle Seahawks. The next game, Buffalo Bills defeating the Cincinnati Bengals 21-17. And Josh Allen had a pretty good game, 23 for 36, 243 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Frank Gore with a throwback game. I mean, this guy just won't go away. It gets better with time almost, and he's just still kicking. And for a running back, that's really surprising, because you think of all the running backs that are willing to retire, or like Le'Veon Bell, take a year off when you have that much mileage on the tires. And Frank Gore has a lot of mileage, but he still had a really nice game. 14 carries, 76 yards, 5 average, a touchdown. Josh Allen ran for 46 yards of his own. And the Bills, I mean, the Bengals are not a good team. They haven't won a game all year. Not having A.J. Green, it really stinks, because that is Andy Dalton's guy. That's his Mike Evans, like Jameis Winston. A.J. Green makes Andy Dalton better, because Dalton's not an elite quarterback. But when you have A.J. Green out there, it really opens up the offense, because he requires so much attention, because of the ability that he could get open like this, and either you get to A.J. Green, or you have to put more defenders on A.J. Green, which opens up the other receivers, makes Cincinnati a much better team. But all of a sudden, the Bills are 3-0. Again, not similar to the 49ers, not something you expected, and it's been a big improvement for the Bills, because they were so bad last year, and they didn't make any drastic changes. I just think it's the development and Josh Allen being a dual threat quarterback, improving his accuracy, being a guy that you actually could, care about his arm and you play for it, and not be like, oh, well, we have to worry about his offense and his arm. That's something you have to consider now. It just makes the Bills a much better team, and they're going to have a real good shot at the wild card, because we know they're not winning the division with the New England Patriots being in there. The next game we'll go to continue with that AFC East division, the Dallas Cowboys defeating the Miami Dolphins 31-6. And this is a game where Josh Rosen was able to get some play time. And Josh Rosen, he went 18 for 39 for 200 yards, but he got sacked 3 times. And the Dolphins only putting together 6 points. And for the Dolphins, they just have not scored any points all year. And when you're going up against a really good team like the Cowboys, you're just going to get crushed, and that's what happened. Dak only went 19 for 32 for 246 yards, a couple touchdowns, only got sacked once. But the Cowboys just destroyed the Dolphins on the ground. Ezekiel Elliott, 19 carries for 125 yards, an average of 6.6. And Pollard with 13 carries for 103 yards. So you had 2 separate rushers go over 100 yards, both under 20 carries. Even Pollard was under 15 carries. And to gain that many yards on the ground, really, I mean, that's what's going to win you the game. The time of possession differential was only by a minute, considering all the rushing yards that Dallas had, but it just didn't matter. The Cowboys had plenty of penalties, but it just doesn't matter, because the Dolphins are that bad. And you know what? That's going to help the Buffalo Bills. They're going to beat the Dolphins when they face them. And like I said, the Bills could really be a wild card team, especially if the Chargers are struggling, or these other teams in the AFC West aren't doing much, like the Denver Broncos or Oakland Raiders. The Chiefs are going to win that division. If the teams in the South are struggling, they have a very good chance. All you need is one wild card spot. So I do think that Buffalo is probably the most surprising team as far as winning, because I just don't think anybody was expecting that. So then you definitely got to give them credit, because, like I said, they're not a team that anybody was really talking about. The next one, another surprise, was the Detroit Lions defeating the Philadelphia Eagles 27-24. Matthew Stafford only 18 of 32 for 201 yards, a touchdown. Carson Wentz 19 of 36 for 259 yards, couple touchdowns. He got sacked 3 times. And you know what? There were plenty of drops in this game, led by Nelson Aguilar, who is kind of becoming known for that and is becoming popular for that. And people all over social media are like, oh, ha, ha, Nelson Aguilar can't catch the ball, and things like that. And that's unfortunate because Carson Wentz is a good young quarterback. And if you're letting him get hit like that, and if you're not catching his passes, you're really messing up the development of Carson Wentz. And that's a bad blow for the Eagles because the Cowboys are going to run with the division, and for the Eagles, they're lucky that they get to play the Redskins, who aren't any good. And the Giants, they're improved. I think that's going to be a good game whenever they match up. They're going to match up twice because it's in the division. But Giants-Eagles, between Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz, what's going to happen there? I do think that's going to be a high-scoring shootout game, so that should be a lot of fun when those games happen. The next one, Minnesota destroying the Oakland Raiders, 34-14. Derek Carr, 27 of 34, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, got sacked 4 times. And you know why? That is because the Vikings had this tremendous defense. Harrison Smith, he had a takeaway in this game, but you had Aaron Kendricks with tackles, Trey Waynes with a bunch of tackles, Wilson with 10 tackles, a couple sacks. So all these different things. I mean, the Vikings just have a really good defense, and the Oakland Raiders just don't have any talent. No great skill players on the offensive side of the ball, and it's just not going to be enough to keep up with them, especially when Dalvin Cook has such a good game on the ground. Kirk Cousins didn't have to really do anything in this game, and the Vikings still won by 20 points. So that was very similar to like Patriots, Jets, or Cowboys, Dolphins. That was just a complete mismatch where the Vikings took advantage. Next one, Jacksonville Jaguars defeating the Tennessee Titans 20-7, and good game for Gardner Minshew, who went 20 of 30, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette, 15 carries for 66 yards. And with all that being combined, Jalen Ramsey had a big game, getting 9 tackles and forcing a fumble. So Jalen's probably playing his butt off because we know that he requested a trade. So Jalen Ramsey is trying to get to that other team. But maybe if Gardner Minshew continues to play well and the Jaguars win some games, maybe Jalen will want to stay. So I think that's something that's worth considering, and maybe the Jaguars want to keep him because what gave the Jaguars their success and the ability to get to an AFC Championship game a couple years ago, even with Blake Bortles as their quarterback, was their defense. For the Tennessee Titans, Marcus Mariota going 23 out of 40, 304 yards. But here we go. 9 sacks. So that is what Jacksonville is about. They're getting back to their roots, putting pressure on quarterback. I mean, when you have Calais Campbell on your front, and he had 3 sacks in this game, and you have Allen getting 2 sacks, who they drafted, who I thought the Giants should have took, but you have got Josh Allen and Calais Campbell on your front. I mean, you're going to make things happen defensively, especially when you add in, a guy like Marcel Darius, who had been a Pro Bowl player with the Buffalo Bills a while ago. All those guys combined, it makes it very hard. So you sack Mariota 9 times, and it looks like the Titans might have some things going because you have 304 yards in the air. You feel like you should be able to get some points. But when Calais Campbell comes and hits you, or Josh Allen comes and hits you, it prevents the Titans from really putting up any points and being able to limit Derrick Henry on the ground. That's the other thing that you have to do when you're facing the Titans. Henry, 17 carries for 44 yards. So give the Jaguars a ton of credit, finally playing like the team that they're supposed to have been last year when they had a really disappointing year after being really good 2 years ago, like I mentioned. And then to close off in the Monday night game, the Chicago Bears taking care of the Washington Redskins. And this was a big game for the Bears because their offense had not been as good as it had been last year with Matt Nagy as the head coach, getting the most out of Mitch Trubisky. And Trubisky, I mean, he was pretty good. 25 out of 31, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns. And that's all it takes when you're facing a team that isn't very good in the Washington Redskins. And I think that that's also going to be interesting for the Giants. And because the Giants are now 1-2 and they're in this tricky spot, they're going to have to make the most out of those games. They're going to have to take advantage of the Redskins. And for the Eagles, they're going to have to do the same thing, and the Cowboys. So I just think that everybody's going to beat up on the Redskins, and it's going to make the NFC East pretty interesting. But I don't think the Giants will really be able to do anything with how bad their defense is and with how bad the offensive line performed yesterday. No matter how good Daniel Jones is, I just don't think it's going to be enough. And with Saquon Barkley being out, it's just going to be way too tough. But we just have to hope that Daniel Jones continues to be effective, productive, don't get hurt, and don't get mono. Don't be like the Jets. That should be the Giants' motto. Don't be like the Jets. And you know what? That will do it for week 1. Case Keenum throwing 3 picks, so that's an easy win for the Bears. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll be back next week to talk about week 4 of the NFL. If you liked it, leave a like. Anything you want to share, leave a comment. If you want to show a friend about my wonderful football knowledge and, some different views on things and my passion in it, let them know. Give me a follow on Twitter, Frank D. Cugino, or you can, add me on Facebook, Frank Del Rios Cugino, where you can see all the podcasts that I posted, even back in the good old audio-only days, if you want to hear my takeaway when the Jets and Giants were bad last year, and when the Mets were even worse last year. So those definitely make for some interesting podcasts. If you want to check those out, have a good one, everybody.